Trudy Hushbeck was born Gertrude Gray Griggs, March 9, 1924, to Max and Verna Griggs. Mother grew up in a small town just outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Her father was injured in an accident at work, and so the Depression years were particularly difficult. This is probably why we do not have a lot of early pictures of Mother, and this is believed to be the earliest taken when she was 16. As she got older, Mother wanted to be a singer, so she left home to pursue a career and found some success. She worked for a number of bands, including the Glen Glade Band, one of the top North American dance bands of the period, and was put under contract by Howard Hughes. In 1943 and 44, she toured the combat theaters in North Africa and Europe with the USO. Wanting to do more, however, on July 21, 1944, she enlisted in the Women's Army Corps. After the war, she was singing in a nightclub in Miami where she met a young officer waiting to be released from the Army Air Corps following the war. Before long, they were married on October 19, 1945, moving to California, where they opened a restaurant, Trudy's Chicken in a Basket. Serving chicken, steaks, and southern home-cooked meals, the restaurant also served beer, wine, and had a dance floor. Mother made the transition to civilian life and, in 1947, gave birth to their first child, Jean. On June 19, 1948, Soviet troops halted passenger traffic through East Germany to Berlin, and 2 days later halted supply trains. In response to this blockade, the United States and its allies began the Berlin Airlift, a massive effort to supply the sectors of Berlin under Allied control. These events were to radically transform the rest of Mother's life when, as a result, Dad was recalled to active duty. But as are the ways of the military, rather than being sent to Europe, he was sent to Japan to help rebuild the airlift capacity that had been lost by all the planes being sent to support the airlift. There he was a sole survivor in a fiery clash in 1949 that left him in the hospital for 6 months. Military service is not restricted to those who actually serve. A great deal is borne by the spouses and loved ones, and during this time Trudy had to dispose of the restaurant and wrap things up in California before heading to Japan. During this time, Jean came down with an illness so serious that she was not expected to live. In fact, the Red Cross duly informed Dad and asked if he wanted to return back to the States, a month after Mother and a very healthy Jean had arrived in Japan on the General D.E. Altman first transport to bring families to Japan. In Japan, they made a lot of new friends. Toured the country, and added another daughter, Trudy Ann. Having recovered from the crash, Mother and Dad were preparing to return to civilian life in September 1950. But these plans were cut short by the start of the Korean War. Dad was the navigator of the first plane to fly into Korea following the start of hostilities. After 52 combat missions, new orders came, transferring Dad to Langley, Virginia, to be an instructor. Mother, Jean, and Trudy Ann set sail from Yokohama, Japan, on the General H.B. Freeman, arriving in Seattle, Washington on March 15, 1951, where they met Dad and stayed for a few months. Before driving cross-country, stopping along the way to see relatives, and giving Mother a chance to experience the West. Having to set up a new household, make new friends, was again a challenge, but before long it was time to pull up stakes and move yet again. Dad had been transferred to England, And so on February 20th, 1954, with Jean and Trudy Ann in tow, Mother set sail from New York on the SS America. During the cruise, Trudy Ann was almost swept overboard by a wave, but quick action by a crewman caught her just in time. Arriving in Southampton, England, after 7 days, they headed up to Sculthorpe, a U.S. and RAF air base in the northwest of London. Setting up home in an old manor house was again challenging. Dad would often be gone for long stretches of time, and Mother and the two girls would be there alone, with the possible exception of two ghosts who they came to refer to as George and Henry. One night, when Dad had been gone for about 3 months, Mother heard someone breaking into the house. Getting Jean and Trudy Ann into her bedroom, she waited until the man tried to enter their room, at which point she shot him in the leg. Despite that, overall England was a pleasant place, making more friends, trips to London, seeing more sights, and even a trip to Germany, along with adding the final 2 children, myself and David, to the family. In June 1957, Mother and the children returned to the States. However, this time Dad was with them as they flew Flying Tiger Line, arriving at what was then Idlewild Airport on their way to El Paso, Texas, to once again set up a new life. Being alone in a new area presented special challenges. One day in El Paso, a very young David decided to see what kerosene tasted like. This was long before poison control centers or even 911, and long before they could afford 2 cars. So Mother grabbed him, told Jean to watch the rest of us, and ran out to the highway and hitched a ride to the hospital. The coming years would see still more moves, going to Omaha, Nebraska, to where she began teaching children how to swim, and State College, Pennsylvania, so that Dad could finish his degree. Vandenberg Air Force Base, California, where Jean left home to begin her own life, and Los Angeles, California, where Trudy Ann set out, along with shorter stays in Ohio and Tennessee. Then there were the vacations. If we were not traveling across country because of some move, then we were probably traveling across country to visit relatives, as Dad had family in Wyoming and Oklahoma, and Mother's family were still near Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Wherever she was, my mother worked hard to fit right in. Finally, they moved to Norton Air Force Base near San Bernardino, California, where I and my brother left, and the grandchildren began to arrive. There my dad finally retired from active duty, not to retire, but to start Hushbeck Realty with Mother. Such was the life of an Air Force wife, moving from place to place, working various jobs to help make ends meet. For a time she even worked as a reporter, interviewing people, such as an actor with interest in politics named Ronald Reagan. This was not too surprising, as Mother had both a long-standing interest and involvement in politics. During her short stint in civilian life in California, she had volunteered for a young naval officer running for a seat in Congress named Richard Nixon. Mother was not one to just sit around and wish things were better. She was a doer, working on numerous campaigns and for political organizations. From state assemblymen and senators to congressmen and senators, governors and presidents, Mother worked tirelessly, and not just during the campaign season. She eventually became chairman of the California Republican Assembly, and then later the California Congress of Republicans. Having their fill of California and its taxes, they moved to Carson City, Nevada, determined to finally retire. But before long they were again deeply involved in politics, working on many campaigns, and Mother rising to become vice chairman of the party, turning down the chairmanship, though she served as acting chairman for over a year. It was during this time that she was chosen to serve as an elector, and in this role she cast a key and deciding vote for George W. Bush to become the president following the pivotal election in 2000. Following the death of my father in 2003, Mother finally did retire and moved to Idaho to be near her daughter. There she spent the last years of her life making a new home and some new friends. Life was a life of service, first and foremost to her family, which continued to grow, but it did not stop there. From serving as a USO singer before enlisting in World War II, to teaching children how to swim, to volunteering her time for numerous political campaigns and organizations, to finally serving as vice chairman of the Republican Party in Nevada. Mother's life has been a life of service. Her impact will be felt for generations. We are all better off because of her efforts and her love, and she will be truly and deeply missed.